Today, on this episode of Open Mic Night of the Living Dead, we talk about 1981's The Evil Dead.
The creature's creeping right behind you. I hope you finally find a little slice of peace and light. 'Cause it comes crashing down tonight. Welcome to the open mic. When we call your name, you'll die. But there's no need to dread. This is the open mic night of the living dead.
All right. Hey, everybody. Like Rachel said, we're talking about the original The Evil Dead today, directed by Sam Raimi. I'm John.
I'm Rachel.
And I just want to let you know, like we always let you know, there will be spoilers in this. So if you haven't watched the movie and you don't want spoilers, give this a pause. Go listen to the movie.
Listen to the movie.
Yeah, that's how I do it. What I do is I watch the movie the first time with my eyes closed, and I just listen to it. I just listen to it. And then the second time I watch it, I turn the sound off.
Eyes open.
And I watch it.
Okay.
And I try to synthesize it in my brain. Mm-hmm. And then the third time I watch it, then I see how I did on my synthesis.
The things I learn about you after a decade of being together.
I mean, what do you think I do after you go to bed?
That's true.
What I'm
fair.
doing. It's just
watching the same movie 3 times.
Yep, I think that's the best way to do it. But either way, we're going to be talking about things that happen in this movie. So you've been warned. So, The Evil Dead, you want to give us a little summary?
I sure do. The Evil Dead is a film in which 5 college students go on vacation in an isolated cabin in the woods. They find an audio tape that releases a legion of demons and spirits when they foolishly play it, despite all of the warning signs not to. 4 of them are subsequently possessed by demons, and the remaining member of the group has to slaughter his friends and sister and then escape.
Tale as old as time. So, when was the last time you went on a trip to a cabin with your friends and had to kill them all because they were possessed? No, sorry. Wrong question. When do you remember first watching The Evil Dead?
I am not sure. I do remember first watching it. The specific time that I watched it, it was, however, most likely in college, because I remember that I had VHS copies of The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, and I started my video cassette collection when I was in college. So that would have been 1999, 2000, around then. I remember having love for the franchise as a whole, not specifically when I first saw the films, but it would have been when I was like 18 or 19.
And I don't know when I first saw The Evil Dead. It was only within the last few years, I think, at least all the way through. And I did say at the end of the Exorcist episode, when we spun this, these are not necessarily my favorite, but I do think I will kind of take that back a little bit. I do think this original movie is my favorite out of the 3, which I know is potentially a bit of a hot take.
I was going to say, yeah.
But we'll see. We'll eventually probably get to some of the other movies, and I'm always open to liking movies more than I did the first time. I want to love every movie. So, but I think for me, without jumping ahead into later shows, I like slapstick kind of comedy. I love horror movies, obviously, but for me, the blend doesn't work as well for me, but again, I'm open to trying again. Maybe I wasn't in the right mindset last time we did Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness.
Yeah, that makes sense, that you would then like this film out of kind of the 3 original, or the first 3 in the franchise, right? Because this one has the least amount of slapstick compared to the second and the third movies, which I think when I was younger, I think Army of Darkness was my favorite because of that slapstick humor and ridiculousness. And watching this one, actually, I had kind of conflated the first and second movies in my mind, which we'll get into, I'm sure, later about all of that. But that's, yeah, I'm not sure this is my favorite of them all, but I have an appreciation for it now that I certainly didn't have 25 years ago when I saw it for the first time. But I really do love this franchise, so much that I named one of my cats Ash, and everyone always thought it was Ash from Pokemon, but it wasn't. It was Evil Dead. Only the people that said Evil Dead were like, that was information, you know? I was like, they're cool.
That being said, what is your rating for this movie? Our rating system is basically, first tier is you wouldn't recommend it. You probably wouldn't rewatch it unless you're absolutely desperate. 2 is a middle tier that probably encompasses almost all, the highest percentage of movies where you like it, it's pretty good. You'd recommend it to a horror fan at least. Happy to at least rewatch it once to get more out of it. And 3 is kind of top tier, fantastic, maybe was a trendsetter in some way, or, it was just ultimately really well done. And you watch it again and again, that kind of thing.
I gotcha. No, thank you for that reminder. And I'm sure it also helps listeners who may be listening out of order. I think this is a high 2 for me. I certainly would recommend it to anybody who considers themselves a horror fan, if only because it is one of the great examples of horror movie directors who go on to become really big mainstream directors, right? So Sam Raimi, and we'll talk about that. But that connection, I think, is really important. And also just because there was a lot of really interesting stuff they did. It's a great example of an indie film that does a lot on a small budget. So for that reason, definitely a 2 on the higher end. And I think it just doesn't quite reach that 3 tier for me.
Yeah, I was the same. I call it a 2+.
2+. Sounds like we needed maybe 4 steps. No, we'll stick with 3.
No, this makes sense.
This makes total sense. Should we mention that the wind is really loud?
Oh, yeah.
Which is appropriate, I think, for this movie because the environment is participating in the production right now, and I feel like that's appropriate for this film.
Yeah. Where we chose to live is apparently a wind tunnel. So I have a feeling this won't be the last time we are forced to record in heavy winds, but I do think it is very appropriate. So in terms of the filmmakers and this film, like you mentioned, indie film, at least at the start, and by far the lowest budget movie we've covered so far. I mean, it's only the 3rd movie episode we're doing, but it probably will be a while again before we have a movie this low budget. The budget was initially, by the time they finished filming, it was around $375,000. And then it earned $2.4 million in the U.S. and $27 million internationally. We'll get a bit more into that later during the vibe check and sort of where we're covering some of the production end of things. Directed by a young 21-year-old writer-director, Sam Raimi. And you might have heard of him.
Yeah, maybe.
Can you off the top of your head? Usually I put a list of the movies that the director is also directed, and I didn't do that this week because I know a few, but let's see what you can come up with off the top of your noggin.
Don't do this to me, and if I make a mistake. Okay, so obviously Evil Dead 2, and he directed Army of Darkness, right? Mm-hmm. And he did not direct Intruder, but he was in it, which is one of my favorite deep cut movies, so that's why it's popping into my head. And Spider-Man, that was the kind of the big mainstream one, and I'm not going to be able to remember any other ones with any amount of certainty right now. So
He did that. What was that one that we watched? It has Justin Long in it.
Oh,
and
the Gypsy Curse Face.
Gypsy Curse Face. That's it.
I can see.
That's the one. I can see the cover too.
Oh, stop it. We just watched
Something
it.
about the devils.
This is embarrassing.
I can see the cover. It came out in like 2009.
Yeah, we watched it within the last year.
He also directed a movie called The Gift.
Oh, right. We really like The Gift, too.
Not that. That's a different The Gift that you're thinking of.
Oh, is it?
This The Gift we never watched together. I watched it back in high school, I think, or no, it would have been post high school. But
okay. Yes, I am now seeing which gift you are discussing. I have not seen that one. The one that we are having an embarrassingly hard time naming is Drag Me to Hell.
Drag Me to Hell. See, I said it.
Yeah, you were really close. Yeah, and not all horror movies. I mean, again, he transitioned out of horror movies, so.
What has he done lately?
Lately, what has he done? I'll have to look at that in a different order because I'm looking at it somewhere that doesn't have it in chronological order. Has it in popularity order. Hold on one second. I'm not sure what he's done lately. Let's see.
I mean, obviously he produces a lot of movies as well. I'm not going to get into that list.
Right, that's a lot. Let me see if I can do this by director. So what has he directed recently? He hasn't directed anything since 2017. The Black Jandola, which that's a short film. He did direct one episode of Ash vs. the Evil Dead.
Have you watched that yet?
I haven't. I was waiting to watch that. And then before that, he did Oz the Great and Powerful in 2013, Drag Me to Hell in 2009. Yeah, he's not a super prolific director anymore.
I mean, what I'm looking at shows he directed Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness in 2022.
Oh.
50 States of Fright in 2020.
That's TV shows, episodes. I was looking at
Oh,
films.
yeah.
So I just
I mean,
missed the
Doctor
Doctor Strange
Strange,
in the multiverse. Yeah. I missed that one. But yeah, other than that, so some TV and that kind of stuff.
And it was the genesis of this was that Sam Raimi and his college buddy Scott Spiegel were friends. Scott Spiegel got Raimi into horror films, and Raimi was into filmmaking or the idea of filmmaking to begin with. But they made a short called "It's Murder, Sam." Then Raimi, along with Spiegel, their friend Robert Tappert, and Bruce Campbell, after filming that short, decided we could probably shoot a full-length movie ourselves. And so this idea kind of began around 1978. They started researching and watching just tons of horror movies, particularly paying attention to lower budget hits like Night of the Living Dead, Last House on the Left, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because they knew that they were going to be trying to do some of this on the cheap. And Raimi got the idea to base this film around the Necronomicon Ex Mortis. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Sure.
Ex Mortis.
No, maybe.
Necronomicon Ex
That's
Mortis.
close.
Which is also known as the Book of the Dead. So he was inspired by his college history class and works of H.P. Lovecraft. They went to their friends, family, doctors, lawyers, anybody they could talk to and talk into help for funding. They shot a short called Within the Woods that I've not seen. I'm wondering if it's available on YouTube or anything like that. Sometimes these things are, but it's kind of a preview to show investors. Their original budget goal was $90,000. And again, it ended up being somewhere between $350,000-$400,000.
Which I was watching an interview with Bruce Campbell, and he talked about how the budget for the first was $350, and then the second one was $350 million. That there was a tenfold, $35 million. Hold on,
Must have been
Sorry.
$35 million.
I was counting 100 instead of 10.
I think $350 million is what F1 is.
No,
one
I
we
know.
were just
Sorry,
talking about.
I wrote down the wrong
Damn.
thing.
Not quite seeing where they put that money in.
$3.5 million.
I know Evil Dead 2's beloved.
350,000, $3.5 million, 10 times. Look,
It's a lot of zeros.
it's a lot of zeros, but the point being, the difference between the two movies and what they were able to pull off with The Evil Dead with such a small budget and a lot of commitment.
Yeah, and a lot of hardship almost.
Yeah, it was a really hard movie to make. I don't know if we're going to talk about that yet, but I know I got a few notes on that.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit here. Editing was done by Edna Ruth Paul. Production was an all hands on deck scenario. And I think one of the things that I really like about the movie, and we'll get to the cinematography and everything a bit later, but before you start telling us a bit about the cast and anything like that, even though it's low budget, and it's obviously a low budget, when you're watching it, the filmmaking itself, the shot selection and all of those things really are indicative of somebody who has an eye for filmmaking and big filmmaking. So even though maybe the quality of the camera was not something that they were able to control as much, they still filmed it, shot it, edited it as if it were top of the line film. And I think that really comes across, and that's something that really keeps my attention when I'm watching it.
It would.
But here in story time, you tell me a little bit about the cast,
Sure.
characters, anything like that.
Yeah. So, cast, first of all, the one most people think of is Bruce Campbell playing Ash Williams. Fun fact there that he offered to help produce the film. He was a friend of Sam Raimi's. They all went to school together. And he was cast as Ash because his producing responsibilities made him the only actor willing to stay for the entirety of the production, which is pretty incredible when you think about the career that Bruce Campbell has had. And this was his first big role, and how that kind of launched him and a really fantastic career in movies. So he plays Ash. There is Ellen Sandweiss plays Cheryl Williams, who is Ash's sister, which I didn't know. I'm not sure I knew that his sister was in this movie before. I'm not sure I ever made that connection when I watched this. The character sister. The character sister, yes. That's what I meant. I never knew that she was his sister for some reason, because I remember in the remake, it comes out much later, there's a brother-sister relationship, and I remember being like, oh, they made them brother and sister. I somehow, my 18, 19-year-old self did not clock that Cheryl was Ash's sister. We've got Scotty, his buddy, played by
Scotty Too Hottie.
Richard DeManincourt, parentheses Hal Delrich. I'm not sure. One of those is his name in the film, and one of them is his real name. Betsy Baker played Linda. She responded to an ad in the Detroit News. They were looking for actresses, and so she responded. So she plays Linda,
which is Ash's girlfriend.
Ash's girlfriend, yes.
Seems like a more complicated weekend getaway to have your sister and your girlfriend there.
That's the thing. Like, they don't really talk about it at all, but it's
very mature. Two
couples plus one of their sisters. Like, it was just kind of a...
I mean, I guess that's possible.
I guess it's possible. I've never done anything like that with any of my sisters. No haunted cabin weekends. Pretty sure they wouldn't be interested. Also, pretty sure none of my sisters would have gone in the basement, or supported me going into the basement. Let's see. Teresa Tilley played Shelley. And then both Sam Raimi and Robert Tappert played local fishermen. They were uncredited, but they are the fishermen that they pass as they're going to the cabin at the beginning. So they make little cameos. And Sam Raimi does that quite a bit. He's sneaky like that. So yeah, that's our cast. Pretty small cast. Although many of them have multiple faces throughout the main five. 4 of them eventually have a very change in character. So they're playing really different sides of things.
Well, and then eventually a lot of them had to leave as shooting went over, which we'll get into. But you eventually had some other people playing their parts in certain scenes. One thing about this movie is we were watching it again. It's been a few years since I had seen it. I'm usually taking notes when we're watching for the podcast, and took forever for them to say all the characters' names.
Yes, I have little side notes here. I was like, who is that? Who is
It was like, because I just had like descriptions until, like, I think Linda I had his sweatshirt, but then eventually she changed into something else, so that wasn't helpful. But yeah, I don't know why I'm complaining, because I'm the worst at remembering character names to begin with. That's why I, adamantly put you in charge of casting characters in these things.
We've got the 5.
We've got Scotty, Ash, Cheryl, Linda, and what's the Shelley?
Shelley. Yeah.
I also don't love that. I don't love that there's a Cheryl and a Shelley.
That is tough. And an Ash.
I mean,
yeah, I know. But also, I'm guessing his name is Ashley.
it is, they say it.
Right, exactly. I wrote that. Oh, yeah, I did write that down. Yeah, so Ashley, Shelley, and Cheryl.
But he's the guy, so...
You have a less difficult time differentiating. Yeah. I get it.
And it's so unique for his character. But then to have 2 of your 3 characters be Cheryl and Shelley, maybe that was more distinct back in 1981. But my character name brain has a harder time with that. But that's not a big complaint. That's not like something that I hold against it. Just makes it slightly more difficult for me. And obviously we've seen Bruce Campbell in a lot of things over the years. Do we know if any of these other actors went on to do much in the acting realm?
I don't believe so. I checked into them briefly, but didn't find anything else of note necessarily. I don't think they did much else. I think I looked up Scotty. So, no.
Out of this small cast of characters, do you have a favorite? Ash. Okay, great. Thank you, Rachel. Very original. What about you, John? Oh, I'm not so sure. Probably Ash. All right, good.
It does look like Ellen Sandweiss continued to work with Sam Raimi on a few things, including the other Evil Dead movies, Oz the Great and Powerful, a few other things. But yeah, none of the others have had a career like Bruce Campbell, that's for sure. And yes, Ash, I named my cat after him, of course, obviously. But I think there's a lot of character development for most of them. Not a lot for Shelley, although there is some when they're doing the, there's the wind. When they're doing the card tricks and she's lying, you kind of... So I guess there's some depth to these characters, even though none of them are as compelling as Ash. Also, the rest of them, they don't survive. Scotty's kind of a dick, and Ash is super nice, so it's easy pick.
Well, I think that wraps up sort of the character filmmaker section. I can only mean one thing. Vibe check.
Vibe check.
All right, we've got a lot in the vibe check section today, because a lot of I think sometimes the background production information can go in different categories, but I think so much of how this movie made contributed to the overall vibe of it that it makes the most sense to put it in this section today. These guys are from Michigan, right? Or at least that's where they were at this point.
They were at MSU, yep.
And they wanted to film originally in Michigan, but alas, winter was coming, and that would have made their incredibly difficult production all the more difficult. So after doing some research, looking around, they chose Tennessee, thinking it would be warmer, and had the isolated cabin in the woods vibe they were seeking. They finally found a cabin, but at the last minute, the original cabin they were looking at fell through. So they met some local guy named Gary Holt, who secured a cabin for them by November 13th, 1979. And for this effort, he received an assistant producer credit. He also helped with publicity of the film. But the cabin that they found that they ended up using was severely overgrown, had about 4 inches of cow manure on the floors, basically no doors, no electricity, no running water, and it did not have a cellar. This cabin was in the center of a valley surrounded by iron ore, which means the area was super conductive for lightning.
Oh.
Which you would have loved. So when they got to this cabin, they had to spend their first few days not shooting, not rehearsing, not getting production ready, but cleaning and repainting. They ripped out the ceiling, installed phone and electricity with the help of another local named Steve Frankel, a.k.a. Dart. Oh. It was Dart who dug a 6 or 8 foot hole with wooden stairs and a trap door for the cellar. And when you actually see the interior of the cellar, that was shot at Robert Tappert's family farmhouse in Michigan. So when they were putting Cheryl in there, it was just a hole with stairs.
That makes sense. Very cool how they managed to pull all that together. But also for a bunch of college kids showing up and having that be the problem in front of them. And they just dug right in. They just solved it.
Literally.
Right? Just solved the problem and got the art made. So cool.
Actual shooting began mid-November 1979. They started on the bridge sequence, and that bridge was actually a deserted bridge. It was about 15 miles from the cabin that was already scheduled for demolition, and they got permission to shoot there and mess with the bridge and everything.
I cannot imagine that happening today.
No.
Not even close. Like, sure, college kids, go ahead and knock this shit down.
I'm sure, even just securing the cabin for this, I'm not...
Can't even rent a car until you're like 25. Back then, though.
Do anything.
Freedom.
Freedom. Cinematographer on this film was Tim Philo. I should have looked into how to pronounce it. I'm sure it was said out loud somewhere.
Probably.
But I did all my research with my eyeballs, reading, not my ears. It's like I did my research like the second time I watch a movie.
Right.
Close my ears and just use my eyes.
And just use your eyes. So don't know how to pronounce the name properly, but... So this film was shot on 16 millimeter film negative, blown up to 35 millimeters for distribution. It was shot on spherical lenses. The version we watched was on standard screen, right? I don't know.
I don't know if there is a wide of it. And again, low budget production, no big film crew, no big film equipment. They had no dolly, which is... for the moving shots, you're shaking your head at me.
I'm shaking my head because I don't know anything about this stuff. So you say dolly, I think I know what that is, but...
Hello, dolly.
And I think I know what it does, but yeah, that sounds important.
And really, in terms of dolly shots, they had only become, I think it was in The Shining, which would have been 1980, that Kubrick was using the dolly there in the hotel, but that's another story for another day. So they had no dolly, no Steadicam. However, they're using a lot of cinematic shots. They really wanted to create the feeling of disorientation.
Could you say more about what you mean by cinematic shots? Like what kind of shots are...
Like if I tried to film something, it would just be like putting a camera and shooting it. But they were really...
Like trying to make like shots that look like they're in a movie.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. I'm only asking these questions because I'm sure that there are people listening who are as ignorant as I am of this side of filmmaking, which is why I love letting you cover the cinematography, because I just don't... I appreciate it, but I certainly don't understand a lot of what I love, the way what I love is made. Put it that way. So hopefully somebody else also learned something new today.
But they're using like Dutch angles. You know Dutch angles.
I mean, you've told me, but I don't remember.
It's like kind of like the looking sort of upward a little bit.
Okay. I'm Dutch.
Yeah, I know that you should know these. This should be what you're...
Half Dutch.
And a lot of full frame shots. Oh, I wrote this in just for you. A Dutch angle, also known as a Dutch tilt or canted angle, is a camera shot where the camera is tilted so that the horizon line is not parallel with the bottom of the frame, creating a sense of unease or disorientation for the viewer. This technique is often used in film to convey psychological tension or instability.
Okay, so it makes sense why this stuff doesn't stick in my brain, because anything having to do with 3D space and placement and angles and depth perception is really difficult for me.
Yeah, you should see her pack the dishwasher.
Easily. Oh.
And they used a lot of sweeping low profile shots, like in the opening, so like closer to the ground.
I wrote something actually that's about cinematography, and I did not I wrote myself a note to look this up, and I definitely didn't look it up, but I'm a huge Peter Jackson fan, and a lot of his, one of my favorite Peter Jackson movies is Dead Alive, which came out in 1991, after this anyway. But he does a lot of those big, like, sweeping into big close-up shots, which is also in Lord of the Rings. You see a lot of that, close-ups of people's faces. And so there was something in the cinematography in this movie that made me think of Peter Jackson, particularly his earlier stuff, which was a little shakier, like Dead Alive or Meet the Feebles or Bad Taste, his earlier movies before he made it big with Lord of the Rings. So that was one note about the cinematography that I noticed that made an impression on me.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I mean when I say that they, even though it was low budget, they were really chose a lot of cinematic shots.
Oh, you know what shot that reminds me of? The one when they first get to the cabin and the swing is creaking and you're kind of like behind the swing and you can see Ash go up to the door. Is it Ash or Scotty? I can't remember. I think it's Ash. That particular shot. So stuff like that. Yeah, it gives the feeling of there's so much intention behind every single shot.
I mean, and there's just a lot of that throughout. I mean, it opens going over the swamp. Is it a swamp? Pond, whatever.
Yeah.
And then when it's following the car, the camera's following the car through the trees. The camera's actually running into the branches, which is really cool. And, you know, since the trees play kind of an evil role later in the film, and it makes a nice connection, maybe some foreshadowing there. Aside from some of those daytime shots, shooting usually took place from 6:30 p.m. until dawn, so kind of my hours. And Sam Raimi did stick figure storyboards. You know what storyboards are?
Yes, I think so.
They basically draw pictures to kind of very simply put. They draw different frames of that will demonstrate kind of maybe how they want to block a shot or the camera angles, something for them to plan so they're not just all drawing it from their head. However, this is not only a Sam Raimi thing, but he rarely stuck to his storyboards by the end of the day because they would get shooting and they'd get new ideas or they'd run into problems with what they wanted to do and had to problem solve a way out of it. They used, I think another interesting thing to think about is that like the job of cinematographer, while it kind of has set responsibilities, the relationship between a director and a cinematographer can vary widely between different movies and movie shoots and productions. And a lot of times it's not necessarily clear who's responsible for the shot selection and those sorts of things. Sometimes a director is going to have a lot more control over that than others. And it just depends on styles and things like that a lot of the time. You know, I think Sam Raimi was really responsible for a lot of the cinematography in this. He used a lot of lengthy, complicated shots, and everyone was impressed with his visual style. His methods led to tension between the cast and the crew. A lot of the shots he wanted to do would require special, expensive filming equipment that they just didn't have. So they came up with, Raimi and Philo came up with what they called the shaky cam or the Samo cam, and they would mount the camera on a 2x4. So if you can imagine a 2x4 board, and the camera would be like set in the center of it, pointing along the, I don't know how to describe it, perpendicular, not parallel with the board.
Right.
And they would hold each side of this 2x4, and so they could go over obstacles with it. It was kind of their version of a steady cam that they didn't have. So a lot of those shots that you see that are going through space, not outer space, but going through the space of the film, is just a camera mounted on a board. And there's that time that the camera goes through a window and the glass breaks.
Right.
They had a camera on a board and they literally put it through the window. And it wasn't like stunt glass. They literally went through some jagged glass to create that shot. And they had other filming techniques that they came up with to achieve the shots they were looking for that resulted in this film.
Cool.
Along with their big ambitions and their lack of funding, this led to many problems during filming. Did you come across any of that?
I did a little bit. I didn't write a ton of it down. I know I did see an interview with Bruce Campbell where he said, after doing 2 or 3 movies with Sam Raimi and then doing movies with other directors, he realized, working with Sam is really hard. That they would have these, 12-hour days for one shot, that it would take just half a day for just one shot. And that because of Sam's standards and his ideas and his ambitions, that working on a movie with Sam ended up being more difficult than perhaps another director.
And they were so young too. I don't know about later shoots on Sam Raimi films, but I would imagine a lot of 20, 21-year-old trying to create this film from their mind. And some of that inexperience, I'm sure, led to some of the difficulties as well. But I mean, this shoot was just plagued with problems. As winter came in Tennessee, the muddy road to the cabin froze, which made it impossible to reach the cabin by foot. So they had to carry their equipment in on foot. Sorry, it was impossible to reach by car.
Got it. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the muddy road froze, and it was impossible to reach by car, so they had to carry their equipment in by foot, which was about a quarter mile. Luckily, it wasn't further, but dragging stuff from your vehicle for a quarter mile back and forth.
Miserable.
The cabin was falling apart. And not to get, you're going to do some of the special effects and everything, but the Caro syrup blood made the floor extremely sticky. And so they had to put ash on the floor, not the character, but like ash, the residue from burning something
I got you.
on the floor to sort of alleviate that problem. They originally had agreed upon 6 weeks for cast and crew to be on location. It quickly turned to 8. Many people had to leave to return to their lives in Michigan. So by the end, it was, Sam, Bruce, Rob, Tappert, and a few others were left behind. Material and scenes were rewritten or dropped from the script entirely as they kind of encountered problems during shooting. The remaining crew, as some of the actors had to return to Michigan, some of the remaining crew had to dress up as characters to replace actors who had left. That's when you're looking at the credits and you see fake Shemps,
Right.
which is a reference to the Three Stooges, which is a big inspiration for Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, and which you see more of that influence, obviously, in the next couple of films. But fake Shemps were, like for Cheryl, for instance, in the basement, a lot of those shots are not the actress who originally was locked down there, simply because they didn't have her. So they put somebody in the face makeup and shoot that way. While they were shooting in this cabin, they were staying in a production house. They weren't staying at the cabin to start, but they were eventually evicted from their production house, which was then turned into a brothel. which forced them to move into the cabin.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so
Only 20-year-olds
yeah,
could do this. Can you, like, 20-year-olds who are not known for their, like, you know, measured decision making or thoughtful.
and no offense to our 20-year-old listeners.
No
out there.
offense at all. We were 21s too. And so that's why we can say it, is that but you don't yet have quite the experience to handle maybe, man, that must have been something else.
Yeah, and then, you know, to finish this up, I mean, their shooting days became like 18 to 20 hours long. Ugh. They find, and there's many other problems if you do a deep dive on this, you know, people were getting injured. I think Bruce Campbell hurt his ankle that never completely went away. And I guess Sam Raimi would poke it with a stick sometimes.
I'm sure he's great, but I bet it might be challenging sometimes.
Yeah, artists
Artists
and their art.
Artists and their art.
And, you know, the actress who played Cheryl got all scratched up, run through the woods and all that good stuff. Tale as old as time when it comes to some of these 80s horror slasher movies where running through the woods is required. But they finished it all up, left Tennessee around January 27th of 1980 with about 90% of the film complete. And the rest they shot in Michigan, like I mentioned before, all of the cellar stuff, interior cellar, that was all shot back in Michigan. So it was quite a production, but I think that really to me that actually comes through in the ambiance of this film. It's gritty, and you can really feel there's like a passion there, that a lot of heart was put into the project. That is something that I've always loved about a lot of low budget horror films, is that, you know, filmmakers or what have you were limited by their budget, which when they weren't just trying to put a movie out there to make money, and they were putting something out there because they wanted to make a movie, that budget limitation led them to come up with interesting solutions, and that passion comes through, I think.
Oh, completely. And I think that's part of why this movie is it's such a part of kind of the basic horror movie curriculum for me, in that maybe, you know, some of the camera shots aren't the best and you can tell that it's rough, but that part of that's part of kind of the late 70s, early 80s DNA of American horror. And I think this is a great example of that. And the birth of a franchise that has survived decades and launched multiple mega careers. So I think that's a great summary of kind of some of the challenges that went in and how it affected the cinematography and the ambiance, that it worked really well. The movie would not be the same. And I think it'll be really interesting to watch Evil Dead 2 eventually, whenever we spin it. So soon after watching The Evil Dead. I think that will be really interesting because they have kind of merged in my mind over the years. So I'm excited to revisit the other ones as well, having kind of this source material fresh in my mind.
What did you find out about special effects?
So much about special effects. So the special makeup effects, a lot of people had a hand in it, as we've been talking about in this very all hands on deck kind of movie. But Tom Sullivan is credited with the special makeup effects, also art direction, illustrator, and special effects, all uncredited. So his girlfriend attended MSU with Raimi, Campbell, Spiegel, and Tappert, so the four. And Tom Sullivan bonded with Raimi over their shared interest in stop motion, special effects, claymation, and puppetry. So they had this shared interest. Sullivan only worked... He didn't have like a long career afterwards necessarily, but he worked on Evil Dead 2. He did work on The Fly 2, and he also worked on Army of Darkness. One thing I discovered newly discovered as I was doing research for this podcast was that there is a documentary called Invaluable, the true story of an epic artist, which is only available on DVD or Blu-ray. It's only physical. You can't get it digitally. maybe you can get it digitally on Amazon. I can't remember, but I was trying to see if I could find it streaming or at the library or anywhere for this, and I wasn't able to find it. But I think there's a lot of really interesting Evil Dead stuff in that. So that's been added to my list of movies I hope to see someday. So the other thing I thought was really, really neat. So Sullivan was responsible for the special effects. You mentioned the blood already, but he added one interesting little note. He added coffee to the corn syrup and food coloring for the blood. So the blood was thicker and darker maybe than what movie than the corn syrup that's been used in the other movies that we've already talked about. But Sullivan also designed the Book of the Dead, and he drew the pen and ink illustrations, the glyphs and the sigils that were in the book, which added so much atmosphere and ambience. Because I think that art design overall, I think that Tom Sullivan really had a big role to play in all of that, and that included all of the ancient writings, the ancient Sumerian Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon, which plays an even bigger role, the actual book, in some of the later movies. So I think Tom Sullivan's contribution is huge here, and I thought that was really neat. The effects, though, there's some really, really interesting stuff that I am flipping through my notes to try to find that I can't find. For example, at the very end, when the bodies are kind of decomposing, that stop motion animation that was used, I thought that was really neat, learning about how that's one of the things that Raimi and Sullivan kind of bonded over. So fitting that in. And that's not something that we'd really seen in any of those other slashers that were inspiration for this. This is a place where the Evil Dead contributed to that early slasher canon, right? So we've got Halloween and we've got Friday the 13th. A couple years later, we've got Nightmare on Elm Street, which has a little more of the tongue-in-cheek humor that we see a bit of here in the Evil Dead. But in terms of special effects, bringing in the stop motion and some of those kinds of effects that was a big contribution this movie had for the genre. Did you take any notes on the special effects that you wanted to stick in here while I find mine?
Well, I think on the stop motion, I think that can go either way for me when that pops up in a movie. I thought it worked in this circumstance, but I mean, it's one of those things that is certainly a bit dated in a sense now that we're looking at this 45 years later.
45, that's wild.
44 really, but who's counting? It's one of those, there's lots of different types of effects that can date a movie, and sometimes it takes me out a bit more. Some things take me out a bit more than other things. Like I was watching a 90s horror movie called Brain Scan recently, and I really enjoyed it. But there were just a couple of instances where the special effects were super dated, and all of a sudden you were like, oh, I'm watching a movie and that doesn't look quite right. And I think that stop motion can do that sometimes, but for me, and I thought they did a great job with it. And it worked really well for like decomposing and that sort of
and it
effect.
wasn't used early on in the film. It was used towards the end, where we've already established this very unreal world that we're a part of, and so it didn't seem as out of place as it might have been earlier on. Raimi used a lot of established special effects tricks that, lots of makeup, and used wires for animating the household objects that were moving around, and for, the various limbs that were kind of jerking around on the ground or flying across the room. So, practical effects left and right. This was the only option they had on this budget and at this time. The tree assault scene, which I have more to say when we kind of talk about themes and some of that stuff at some point, that was filmed in reverse. So something really simple that seems, how did they do that? But that they did that scene in reverse. And we can talk more about that particular scene, because that was one thing I found really interesting. So they used a lot of kind of traditional ones, but also, as we've talked about in terms of the cinematography and some of the practical challenges they encountered while making the film, same thing with the special effects, where they worked with what they had and then they figured out how to do the things that they had in their minds, right? And brought it to life.
And I do think that led to some inconsistency in the special effects.
Yes, I'd say that's fair.
Again, they were doing the absolute best they could do, so it's not a big knock. But I think even the fact that they had different actors having to play some of the Deadites, which that term's not used in this film, right?
I don't think so. I don't think they call them, but that is what they are.
So I think that probably contributed to it as well, where you might have your buddy Tom down in the basement playing Deadite Cheryl. Whenever I'm watching it, I'm not thinking to myself that's a different actor or actress down there. But I do notice sort of the inconsistency in the look sometimes in some of the makeup and everything. But at the end of the day, I think it works more than it doesn't.
Yeah, this is not a hyper-realistic vision of what it would be, right? And even in the remake and then the most recent one, Evil Dead Rise, it seems much more realistic, right? But it still has its foundation, its basis in this original film. One thing I did see that I jotted down here was that there are parts of the movie where the blood isn't red necessarily, but it's white, it's green, it's black, and I didn't dig down into this, but that was a concession to the ratings board, as Raimi unsuccessfully attempted to procure an R rating for this movie. And I didn't know a lot about that. I just saw that in a note and kind of scratched it down just to kind of look into more. But that gives it an even more unrealistic, surrealistic feeling, which works in this universe. It works in the world that the Evil Dead happens in, these kind of unrealistic, these unrealistic things, even though we know that it's not real, it's part of the Evil Dead. I think that I had forgotten, along with a lot of things about this movie, but I had forgotten what the effects looked like. And it is so interesting, as I've said before, and we'll say again, going back to watch some of these movies that had such a huge impact on me early in my film watching life, and seeing them with new eyes now, having seen all the things that came before, having a much more thorough understanding of what else was being made at the time and what inspirations they were playing off of. So yeah, I think the unrealistic nature of some of the special effects works in this. And maybe that's why it's always been one of my favorite franchises, because I like that slightly unrealistic, slightly fantastical side of things. Sometimes I think a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, and that's really a product of the time as well, I think. I think you get, obviously, sort of superhero movies and stuff like that are pretty fantastical still these days, but that in a different way. Like, that's the reality within that film. So it's not that fantastical. But I think movies of the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, but I think that's kind of where the shift sort of took place, is you'd have a bit more of a fantastical reality in a like take Back to the Future as a random example. It's not a fantasy movie exactly. It's sort of played like a straightforward drama in a sense, even though it's got the science fiction elements and all comedic elements and fantasy elements. But just sort of that universe is a bit more fantastic, a little bit more outside the realm of reality. And I think that's really gone away in a lot of movie making these days. And everything is a bit more reality focused. I think filmmakers sometimes maybe are scared to lose the audience with some of those sort of notions or vibes or whatever. And some of that risk taking, which I think is what led to so many interesting and fun films.
I think not everyone is able to suspend disbelief enough to enjoy genre films, especially horror films, in the spirit in which they're made. And that is why if you look at reviews on a review site like IMDb or like Letterboxd, you're going to get a lot of people who just kind of don't get it. And that's okay. Like, it's not made for them. I wouldn't recommend The Evil Dead to everybody. But which is why when someone meets you and you start talking, oh, what kind of movies do you like? Horror movies. Oh, what would you recommend for me? And I have about 18 follow-up questions, because there are some people to whom I will recommend The Evil Dead, but I have to see what they mean by horror first, right? Because this kind of fantastical, surrealistic, intense, edgier stuff, whether you're talking about, a classic like this from the 80s or something that was made in more recent years, you're not going to recommend everything to everyone. One more thing that I forgot to mention about, which kind of encapsulates what we're talking about here. So Sam Raimi did not tell Tom Sullivan exactly what he was going to be doing. He was kind of secretive. And so Tom said he remembered getting questions that gave him hints of what was to come. Like, can you do makeup on a girl so her face is on fire and she's still talking? Which, without knowing what the movie's about, to receive that question from someone and saying, and then I think it would be so cool to follow his thought process in that and what that does for someone whose creativity expresses itself in that way. Just so cool, all of this stuff. I really, really want to see this documentary about Tom Sullivan. I think that would be really, really interesting and would shed some more light on the whole thing. I'd say this rewatch and learning more about it has certainly solidified it as still one of my... So this franchise has a special place in my heart. And it is one of the first ones that I saw most of before we met and before, I hadn't seen all of the Halloween movies or all the Friday the 13th movies or even all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies before we started this journey together. But Evil Dead was one that I always just was really, the slapstick horror comedy vibe of the late 80s, early 90s was totally my jam. So, but yeah, it was really neat to dig further into all this makeup and special effects stuff.
Did you want to talk a few minutes on themes? I think next episode, in 2 weeks, we should move themes, bump it down to when we're talking about characters and stuff.
I think you're probably right. I think that makes more sense. So maybe, because it's really part of story time, right? Yeah. And not so much kind of the vibe check, not so much vibes and more. And obviously there's a lot of overlap between these. But going back themes, I did want to mention the tree assault scene, which was harder. It wasn't that hard to watch. We've seen a lot of movies that have much more graphic depictions of sexual violence. This is the one scene that Sam Raimi has said he regrets slightly. In an interview back in 2012, he said, "Well, I think it was unnecessarily gratuitous and a little too brutal. And finally, because people were offended in a way that my goal isn't to offend people. It's to entertain, thrill, scare, make them laugh, but not to offend them." And so I don't think Sam Raimi knew how offensive it would be, but it did gain him some unwelcome attention and was also responsible for the film being banned in some countries. So it is a scene that he's come up with. The actress who played Cheryl, she didn't know just how violated her character was going to be, even after she had filmed the scene, because a lot of that was done with effects and everything afterwards. So she didn't realize what that scene was going to be when she filmed it. And so I think that scene is definitely, it's one that put a lot of people off. I mean, I don't know, all the dismemberment and the special effects probably put those people off as well. But I have a harder time with scenes of sexual assault in movies, and so this was an interesting one. It didn't bother me as much, probably because it was a tree.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't have the full perspective on this, and I recognize that. I'm just like a middle-aged white dude, even though I sound so youthful and charming. And, watching this movie, I do think it's shocking and it's grotesque, but that's what horror movies do. They're shocking and they're grotesque. But I was going to ask you, there is a difference, right, between some sort of possessed forest assaulting a woman compared to some man, right?
I think there is, and I didn't prepare for this question, so whatever comes out right now is purely just my, I've not thought a lot about this. But yeah, I think there is. I'm thinking immediately of The Exorcist, where Regan is sexually assaulted by Pazuzu herself with her own body, right? Like when we start looking at, I do think that the pure evil of the Deadites and the possession of the forest itself turning against Cheryl's body is to her is as much of a violation as if there was another person doing it. But I think the evil of a person doing it to another person is a different fear that is invoked than maybe the fear of like some just evil force kind of attacking you. Like there's something different when it's a human that's supposed to have empathy and instead has none and is just exercising power than when it is an evil power whose only purpose is to destroy, defile, and dehumanize. And so I think that, I think it's a weird sentence, in the universe of the Evil Dead, it is realistic that the trees would assault Cheryl, right?
That's what I was going to say. It's consistent with the tone of the film.
Yes.
And which it might not have been in the sequel.
I don't think it would be as much in the sequel. I think being attacked and held down and restrained, but not kind of like the sexual nature of it would be less, and because the second one is funnier. It leans more into the slapstick. But I was surprised at how unfunny this was, right? Because in my mind, I've conflated the first two films quite a bit, which I think a lot of people do. And I forgot that this one was so much grittier and more raw and more in keeping with the other kind of big slashers of the time period. So with Halloween and Friday the 13th, where sure, there's titillation. And I think that's part of why this scene was included. Like they studied slashers before they made this movie, and slashers have violence and boobies and crazy special effects. Like that's what they have, right? And so I do not have a hard time believing that a 20-year-old Sam Raimi did not think about the deeper implications of a tree rape scene. That was a cool sentence too.
So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. We'll try to remember to include theme. I'll have to add that to my template for the future.
Oh, don't tell them there's a template.
I'm a Virgo. There's always a template and a spreadsheet for pretty much everything.
Before we head off into our songs for the week, I'll talk briefly on music and sound design. There's not a ton to say. The original music was composed by Joseph DeLuca, except for the jazz ragtime track Charleston by Eric Markman, which you hear in the cellar and then during the end credits. The rest of the original music was by Joseph DeLuca, who would go on to compose for a lot of Raimi's movies and TV shows, kind of went along with him for a lot of the ride, which is pretty awesome. And the soundtrack, along with the sound design, sound effects, those types of things, I really liked the sound design and the soundtrack in this, and the score, I should say, more than soundtrack. It's not like they were doing a lot of needle drops.
I really like the credits music. I wrote that in my notes.
So that was probably the jazz ragtime song that was not by Joseph DeLuca.
Yeah, and there's exclamation points. So I was like, this is
really jazzing it up.
Really liked it. And I actually had quite a few sound notes, or like notes where I wrote sound and put a star, like the sound design in general, not speaking specifically of the soundtrack, but.
And I was trying to figure out, this might be one area where I wish I had done a little bit more digging to see if there's more information. But in terms of the soundtrack, no, not the soundtrack, the sound design.
There it is.
It's really kind of like classic horror movie sound design.
Yes.
I'm just thinking of them when they're first going down to the basement, some of the sounds that they're using. And I don't know, as I was thinking more about it and preparing for our show today, I don't know how much of that was a tribute to all the movies they'd watched versus how much is they trying to demonstrate their idea or trying to support their idea for their film. I don't know if that's worded very well. But either way, watching it, I was like, wow, this is really kind of almost what you expect, but not cliche. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying, but I really liked it. I thought it really contributed to the vibe of really a old school horror movie. And
I agree. The banging of the porch swing, the creak of the door when they first arrive at the cabin, all of that. Speaking of sound design, I think I think I can hear chickens in the background.
It is impossible to get a...
We cannot right now. Today we've got the wind, and one of the chickens apparently just laid an egg. So that's appropriate, though. You know, I guess kind of. This is raw and gritty, like The Evil Dead.
And it was really an effective use of the lack of sound.
Yes.
As well. I mean, speaking of the bench swing, you know, it's just absolute silence except for that creaking and banging.
Yeah, super creepy. Super creepy, which also made it into my song, which we're going to hear shortly.
Yeah, I think it's almost about that time.
It is. I have like 3 things that I should have mentioned before.
Unbelievable.
I know. But like my notes are all a jumble, and then we move on to the next spot. So I just want 3 more little tidbits that I wanted to make sure I got in here. I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but Stephen King actually gave a rave review of the film, which is what resulted in New Line Cinema acquiring the distribution rights and the movie getting a wide theatrical release in April of 1983. So that's kind of neat. You and I have a pretty deep Stephen King connection. That was something that we first had in common when we first met. And so it's kind of cool that his review of the film, and back in 81, he was still a fairly new author, but very, very famous because Carrie, the book, was 1977. Was it?
Well, the movie was 76.
The movie was 76. Okay, so Carrie was early 70s. So Stephen King was kind of super famous. And so him saying it was good resulted in them getting a deal. And so
New Line Cinema, of course, is the house that Freddie built.
Yes. Although, hold on to this for next time. I was in that Bruce Campbell interview I was watching. He said they didn't have... When they made Evil Dead 2, they did not have the rights to the first movie.
Right.
Because New Line had the rights. And so that's a kind of an interesting piece when you think about filmmaking. So I'm sure we'll cover that when we do Evil Dead 2. Second little tidbit I missed at the appropriate spot was that Joel Cohen was on the crew for this movie of the Coen brothers. He was, hold on, where are my notes? He was in the list, and I remember noticing it and saying, hey, what's he doing there? Oh, assistant film editor. So...
you know about their connection, right? Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, the Coen brothers, Frances McDormand. I think all kind of lived together when they moved out to L.A., like in the early days or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but even some of the filming techniques that Raimi used in this, the Coen brothers would use in some of their earlier stuff. I was watching some video about that online and just showing how they used, I think they used the Samocam on the board there for some of their techniques when they were shooting low budget. So.
Yes, it's just, I wanted to make sure I mentioned it because it is so neat to see these connections between filmmakers that we enjoy and realizing how far back some of those connections go, kind of the DNA that shows up in movies when you start watching a lot of movies just a lot of movies. We watch a lot of movies. And the third thing that I just had to bring up, especially right before we do the songs, is the necklace that Ash gives to his girlfriend. He gives her a magnifying glass necklace, which seems like it means something, but we don't know what it means. But it shows up, of course, later on in the movie.
Poor eyesight.
Poor eyesight, perhaps. And it's funny because in the scene where he gives it to her, the camera's kind of out of focus. So it's kind of funny, right? That scene in the back where they're exchanging the gifts and they like keep looking at each other. I really love that scene. I love what it tells us about Ash's character. He's such a kind, supportive brother and boyfriend, right? Like he's trying to take care of his girlfriend and his sister. Again, this is something I thought of when I was working on my song a lot. And so I have a partner who also gives really great gifts. So
Who is he?
John is famous for giving really great gifts.
Let's not get into that.
Fine, fair enough. But for me, that added another little layer of appreciation for Ash as a really good boyfriend. That's it. That's all I have for little extra things that I missed at their appropriate spots.
All right, so we're going to move into the open mic night of the Living Dead for this week. I'm looking forward to hearing your song. I was setting up the recording sessions, setting up for her song, and I've learned the title. Do we need to give some sort of warning for those people who have like their children listening to the episode this week? Because so far we've been a pretty fairly clean show, not 100%.
I mean, with like swears and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we have been just by
that's
accident.
What I'd be talking about.
I mean, I don't know. We were just talking about tree rape. So like, I feel like most kids aren't listening to this. And if they are, they're not going to be bothered by an F-bomb. But yeah.
It's not a F-bomb, is it? If it's in the title, I would
Okay.
imagine there's more than one.
There's an F-bomb in the title of the song and in the chorus of the song and maybe in one of the verses. There's a lot of them, so prepare yourself.
All right, and
It's raw and gritty, John, just like this movie.
so we'll take a short break. We're going to be back, I think, first with Rachel's song. And we are doing something a little different this week. We decided to change the format slightly. We're going to play both of the songs and then discuss them, do our reaction together after that, as opposed to song reaction. I think it make things a little tighter. But we'll be back with Losing Light when that's done. I hope you enjoy the music. We're settled. Is he going to be a problem?
No, he's going to be
We have a dog.
Be a good boy.
This is my Evil Dead song called Me and My Friends. Everyone loves a weekend at the cabin in the woods. Who wouldn't? I know I would. And everyone loves some time away with your friends when it is good. Who wouldn't? I know I would. But every now and then things don't turn out as you planned it. And it doesn't seem to matter sometimes if you understand it. Look at me, look at my friends. I'm not so sure we're gonna make it in the end. Cause ever since we spun that record, we've been through acting like a girl in the cellar. Me and my friends, no, we couldn't comprehend when we were playing incantations. We started something to fear instead, cause we woke up the evil dead. Join us, join us, join us. Well, nobody loves the feeling like you're stuck out here for life. Am I right? I'm not alright. Now your friends are all against you, and the trees won't let you leave. What a night. I mean, can you believe it? Cause every now and then you come to find you are stranded, and you've gotta make the best of what you got even when you can't stand it. Well, look at me, look at my friends. I'm not so sure we're gonna make it in the end. Cause ever since we spun that record, we've been through heck and locked a girl in the cellar. Me and my friends, no, we didn't comprehend when we were playing incantations. We started something to fear instead, cause we woke up the evil dead. I'm not one for burning books, but we found the exception. It seems dismemberment alone won't pass final inspection. And I know how it looks when I'm the only one alive. We started out with 5. Look at me, look at my friends. We didn't make it in the end. Because we spun that record. We've been through heck and we locked a girl in the cellar. Me and my friends. Look at me, look at my friends. I'm not so sure we're gonna make it in the end. Cause ever since we spun that record, we've been through heck and locked a girl in the cellar. Me and my friends, no, we didn't comprehend. We were playing incantations. We started something to fear instead, cause we woke up the evil dead. Join us, join us, join us.
Okay, so here is my song inspired by The Evil Dead. This is called Let's Fucking Leave. Oh, brother, won't you save me? Please get me out of here. Oh, brother, please believe me. I've never felt this kind of fear. I didn't want my first time to be with haunted vines. I know it seems like I have lost my mind. I'm certainly not feeling fine. So let's fucking leave. Let's fucking leave right now. This place was creepy from the start. Now I kinda wanna eat your heart. So let's fucking leave. Let's fucking leave right now. I know that it might be too late. Our decision making hasn't been great, but let's fucking leave. Oh, darling, won't you save me? Please get me out of here. Oh, darling, I can't see you. How did these bloody wounds appear? I should have used that necklace to see more clearly. We should have left that book. It all could have been so easy. But let's fucking leave. Let's fucking leave right now. This place was creepy from the start. Now I kinda wanna eat your heart. So let's fucking leave. Let's fucking leave right now. I know that it might be too late. Our decision making hasn't been great. So let's fucking leave. All you wanted was a weekend to remember. And all you got was a lesson in dismembering. Maybe next time don't go in that fucking basement. And if you find some demon shit, just let it be. And fucking leave. Just fucking leave right now. This place was creepy from the start. Now your friends all wanna eat your heart. So just fucking leave. Just fucking leave right now. Know that it might be too late. Your decision making has not been great. So just fucking leave. Fucking leave. It's time to go. Don't you ever come back. No one would ever come back. Just fucking leave.
Very vulgar.
Very.
All right, them's the songs for this episode. How did you feel?
I felt pretty good. I have been feeling better about showing up with something that's unfinished and kind of rough, especially after seeing what you've been doing with some of the songs, kind of doing further demos of them. So I felt a little more comfortable this time, kind of going for it. Also, I noticed that we both brought up dismemberment, which is not a super surprise in a song about the Evil Dead, but I thought that was kind of funny.
Yes. Well, I was thinking that while I was listening to your song. I'm wondering when, like at some point, I imagine, especially on one of these freestyle weeks where we can kind of write whatever based on the movie, like where our songs are going to, at some point, they're probably going to be like about the same exact thing.
Right. And when I started my song, it was more about the brother-sister thing, because I was interested in that aspect that Ash has both his sister and his girlfriend there, and he fails both of them. I mean, it's not his fault. He was up against impossible odds, but I thought that that was kind of interesting. So when I worked on the song at first, that was the direction I was thinking it was going. But then it just kind of ended up being about the group and more about Ash, and yours was about the friends, obviously. But I do think they ended up more similar this time than I think any of our other songs have been.
Thematically, at least.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was so many things I wanted to put into the song that didn't make it, but I figure if we ever get around to Evil Dead 2, which is kind of a requel,
Yeah.
maybe I can sneak those things in there at some point. So
I kind of did try to call out, and I can't even remember if I managed to do it in this performance that I just had, but I wanted to poke a little bit at the idea of the sequel and how they did the exact same thing.
I just wanted to point out, which I'm not sure we've had the chance to do yet, but for Rachel, it is much more like an open mic for her than it is for me, in a sense that so far you've written all your songs on piano, which you might not always do, but you might. But you're playing on our standing, what do they call those? Baby standing? Stand-in baby?
Oh, an upright?
Yeah, stand-in baby piano.
No, it's not a baby. It's not a baby of anything. It's an
like
upright piano.
Like right after Stop Crawling, but they're not walking yet.
You're
They're
thinking-
holding on to coasting? Is that when they go from...
Cruising.
Cruising.
They
yes.
When little children... It's been a while since our kids were that
Perfect.
big.
Yes, the cruising piano. You're playing on that like a real piano.
Yes. The piano I grew up learning on, actually. So I know that piano real well.
And then you come up here and you have to perform on a MIDI keyboard, which is... There are worse MIDI keyboards you could be playing on, but
Right.
this one is not weighted keys, not full length.
Right.
Full keys.
So yes, I am. It is much harder for me to play as well in here in the studio as than it is to play on the piano downstairs. So that is true.
Do you think that you'll get more used to it over time? And you can also, if you're ever interested, you can also play around with sounds and stuff up here and kind of compose around that too.
I could write my song in here on this piano, but I just feel so much more comfortable at the other piano. But maybe I would. One thing that now that this is what our fourth song that we've written, I think I'm starting to learn what's difficult about this for me and what's challenging and the places where it's kind of pushing me to grow. I don't think it's a surprise that I tend to use the same chord progressions because that's something you've pointed out to me for the last 10 years. So I know that that's a thing I do. But also trying to get some variation, but also realizing that I am very stuck to kind of where I write it. And so being able to be flexible around that, that's a challenge and that's kind of fun. So maybe I'll write my next one on guitar, no promises, but ukulele, I could really stretch. Bassoon, I could write a bassoon song.
They'll love that.
Oh yeah, that'll be great.
How do you sing and play bassoon at the same time?
Oh, you don't. You sing and then you... I don't know. I feel like it could add a lot of atmosphere. Maybe if we do like an Argento movie or something, I could like play an intro on the bassoon. It's like the equivalent of mood lighting, like mood sound, you know?
Well, I'll look forward to that. Episode 163, folks. Bassoon. Yeah, so anything else on the songs before we wrap up this episode?
No, I don't think so. I was really happy I got to put the necklace in there. That was one thing I really wanted to make sure they got into the song, was some sort of reference to the necklace because I like it. So yeah, no, I think that was it. I might
The magnifying glass necklace.
Yes, I might play around with it a little bit more, but I think that's it. Yeah, I really liked yours. I thought it was a really different style than your last few, almost country-ish.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
When I was first singing it, writing it, I was singing with more of a country twang too. But
yeah, there it is.
oh, there's a dog barking.
There sure is. I guess that's the sign.
All right, well, give us 1 second. We're gonna wrap this episode up.
Stop it right now. Stop it right now.
All right, I think that's pretty much everything we have on the songs. Do you have anything else to say about the songs?
No, I'm good.
We'll take a short break and we're gonna be back with Losing Light. that's our episode for today. I had a lovely time discussing The Evil Dead with you.
As always, darling.
And shall I spin to see?
Yeah, let's see what our movie's gonna be for the next episode.
I could have had this open to begin with. Ooh.
Then we wouldn't get your spontaneous song.
For those of you who are interested, our current episode wheel, contains Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Child's Play, Alien, The Thing, Fright Night, Carrie, Night of the Living Dead, Jaws, The Shining, and Psycho.
I like all those movies.
And I'm going to shuffle them up a bit before I spin the wheel.
All right.
And I'm going to spin. That's the wheels are spinning. And finally, our namesake, Night of the Living Dead.
I was just hoping in my mind that it would be Night of the Living Dead. I am so excited. This is fantastic. Oh man, what's our gimmick gonna be?
Oh, right. I don't have a wheel for that still yet.
Oh no, I can do that real quick.
I'm gonna do. What are you gonna do?
I was just gonna do a random number 1 to 6, but
you're gonna guess a number 1 to 6?
no, I'm gonna put it in to Google and then it will give me a random number 1 to 6, and then we can just use that. You just type that in.
Type it in.
And it got number 1, which is
magic words.
Magic words. It's 2 from the film and 1 random is what I have written down for that.
All right, 2 from the film and 1 random.
So we get to pick the words from, or do we pick the words together and we each have to write a song that has those 2 words?
We'll each pick 1 word from the movie that we have to include as we're watching it. We'll each pick 1 word from the movie.
Okay.
And then we'll do a word randomizer somehow online.
Okay, cool.
And before we do the songs next week, next episode we'll do that.
Okay.
Sorry, I keep saying next week, but for those of you who have not been listening to the after show, that's what we're putting out on the weeks we're not doing a full episode. We might talk about films we've been watching that are not, for our major episodes. We're giving some recommendations. And also, we're trying to include at least 1 demo, like a more fully produced demo song from the week before. And we've been having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
I really think you should check it out. And this next week, I'm going to start doing so every time we pick a movie on the wheel, obviously, that's no longer on the wheel. I have another randomizer wheel with way more movies on it. That's sort of the feeder wheel for our main wheel. Can say wheel again. I'm going to start doing that on the after show.
Cool.
Something to look forward for the Evil Dead after show next week.
So for the Evil Dead after show, we will find out what movie is replacing Evil Dead on our main wheel.
What's replacing Night of the Living Dead?
What's replacing Night of the Living Dead on our new wheel? Right. This is all great. I love the randomness of it. It's really fun. Just as a musician and also as a fan of really good movies, to be going through all this with you. So thanks for handling all the wheels.
And if you're not following us online, we're in all the places.
All the social media. OMNLD pod.
OMNLD pod.
Yeah, Open Mic Night of the Living Dead podcast, but just shorter because that's
without
really
the
long.
O for of.
Well,
it's Open Mic Night Living Dead podcast.
Okay, fair. If you're going to be specific.
I just want people to be able to find us.
They'll find us.
But we'll see you at the after show.
Cool.
Or, we won't see you. We won't hear you.
But you'll hear us.
Which is like none of the ways I watch the movie. That's just called not watching a movie. And it's been fun. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.